Today I'm working on this front wing of this Mitsubishi Eclipse, which has a nasty dent right on the bodyline. Using only paintless dent removal, I'm going to restore this wing back to its original shape without using any filler or paint. Hi everyone, it's Jake here from First Shot Dents and welcome back for another paintless dent repair video. So as you've already seen in the intro, we're working on this nasty bodyline crease on the driver's side front wing of this Mitsubishi Eclipse. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. I had an email a couple of weeks ago from Steve Barden, who owns Dapper PDR, who supplies PDR tools which are handcrafted here in the UK. Now Steve was watching some of my YouTube videos on my YouTube channel and noticed that I don't ever use a blending hammer or a wooden paddle for tapping down any high areas or crowns. Now this is true because I don't own either of these tools. Most of you who watch my channel will notice that I'm always using my handle shaft of my hammer and my normal regular tap downs when I'm doing any kind of tap down work. So Steve sent me a challenge, this being that I must only use his tools for any tap down work in my next repair video. So I accepted this challenge and Steve kindly sent these tools over to see if I could do it. So you've seen the tools. Now the only thing left to do is to put my normal tap down tools aside, which I'm so used to using, and it's going to really feel strange using different tools for any of my tap down work, and I'm really going to be out of my comfort zone. Now to make the job even more challenging or simpler, I'm only going to allow myself to use one PDR bar on this repair, and that's going to be my Ultra Dent screw on tip bar with these 4 tips. Right, let's see how I got on. So before I complete this challenge, let's take a closer look at this dent. We can see that the dent falls right on the bodyline and at its deepest point has displaced the bodyline profile at least 15mm. Looking at the head-on view here, we can see we have quite a large crown at the bottom of the dent here. We also have another crown at the top section of the dent too, which is a bit smaller and sharper. The blue area here shows the total size of the low area, and the yellow section here illustrates the sharpest and deepest parts of this dent. The width of the dent is about 220mm and the height is around 200mm. The last thing to mention is the minor scratch on the bodyline edge, which I will polish off at the end of the repair. Now instead of going up through the wheel arch to get on the back of this dent, I decided to take a look under the bonnet to see if there was any access in from the top. A lot of modern cars now have some space at the top of the inner panel, and luckily this car had some really good access to the rear of the dent, as you can see here. As with all my jobs that I've carried out lately, there's a little bit of rain in the air, so I thought it'd be best to put the umbrella up to keep the panel dry. Next, I attach my LED light board in the right position so I can get a good view of the dent from the angle I'm going to be working from. So as I mentioned before, I'm only using my Ultra Double Bend tool, and the first tip I'm going to use is this large rubber tip. Before I start pushing, I first need to warm the panel up in order to prevent cracking the paint, especially on a cold day like today. Now a little tip here: when using part of the bodywork to lever off, it's a good idea to protect it from damage, so I'm using a soft microfiber cloth here to protect the paintwork. So once that's in place, I can feed the bar down into the space at the back of the wing. Using this tip, I'm pushing out as much of the metal as I can without pushing too hard to stretch the metal. Having the leverage point so close to the dent allows me to give a lot of force onto the back of this damage. And as you can see, quite a large bulk of the dent has come up already. So the first tip I'm going to use for the roughing out stage is my standard rubber tip as shown here. Again, as the panel is really cold, I need to put a lot of heat into this area. Sliding the bar into position, I start to work on straightening the bodyline profile and some of the tighter low areas in the middle of this dent. Okay, so I'm using the first tap down tool from my tool challenge. I'm using the round wooden tap down with this round ended nylon tip. I'm also using for the first time the Dapper Slapper, which is the wooden paddle. As I'm tapping down these high spots here, the first thing I notice is the huge reduction in noise as the lever on the face of the wooden paddle absorbs a lot of the noise from the impact when striking the knockdown. And so far both tools are making light work of removing the high areas. I'm now going to start roughing out the top section of this dent, so I'm moving my light into a different position. As this crease at the top section is quite tight, I'm going in with my vinyl plastic tip. Now pushing a tight dent out on a cold panel like this would surely crack the paint, so the use of heat is really important here. So I insert the bar and get my body into the correct position. Then using the tip on the back of the dent, I move up and down this sharp low, gradually pushing all of this dent out. As the metal is quite tight, it moves up slightly higher than the level of the panel. To level this panel back down, I'm going to use the other wooden knockdown with the plastic bullet tip. Again, I'm using the slapper tapper to strike the knockdown, and as before, you can hear the sound is nicely dampened. This tool also has a nice weight to it, which makes it very easy to use. Slowly but surely the high areas are being removed and the panel is becoming level again. Okay, I'm only about a third of the way into this repair right now, and this is where I'm up to so far. Most of the shape is already back, although there is a lot more to be done. Right, so this is the next section I'm going to work on. As you can see, we have these low areas here marked in yellow, and to the right of it we have this large soft crown shown here in red. As before, I'm going to heat this area up to prevent cracking the paint. Then using my screw and tip bar with a rubber tip, I slide this down the gap at the top of the wing. Here I'm using this tip to gradually bring up all the low areas which I just highlighted. As you can see, all these low sections are slowly coming back up. I'm now moving back up to the top section of the panel again to remove the other low section. So first I'm using heat again before going in behind. I'm using the vinyl plastic tip again, as this tip is more suited to this type of dent. As you can see, I'm pushing up all the small low areas, including the section of the bodyline which is still sitting slightly low. I'm using the wooden tap down with the bullet tip to remove all of the sharp high spots. I'm now going to concentrate on the high crown, so I'm moving over to the other side of the panel. This is the largest of the crowns to knock down, shown here in red. So for this, I'm going to be using the Dapper Tapper blending hammer. Now because this blending hammer has a nice long handle, it allows me to stand quite far back so I can get a really good view of this crown. So I'm just slowly working this crown back down again, taking my time not to make any wrong movements that could see me putting any dents back into the panel. Although I don't normally use a blending hammer, this hammer is really easy to use and has a nice balance to it, which allows me to gradually bring this crown back down again. I'm also using the plastic bullet tip again on the wooden knockdown to tap down some of the sharper high points. So a quick review at the halfway stage shows that the panel is much more level, although there are still a few minor lows and highs left to deal with. So I'm now moving the light back around to the other side once again so I can attack this crown on the upper section shown here in red. I decided to use this large flat screw on tip for this, although after a few attempts it just wasn't working out, so I decided to switch to this smaller flat plastic tip, as it should be able to make better contact with this crown. I slowly worked this crown from side to side and gradually it completely disappeared. Now for all the fine detail work, I'm switching up to my root beer tip. This is a really hard tip and will prevent putting any sharp high spots into the paint surface. As you can see on the lower section here, all the main damage is out now. All we have left is a series of micro lows and micro highs in the surface of the panel. So first I push up all the micro lows easily using the root beer tip. I then use the plastic bullet tip to tap down all the micro highs, and as you can see, this wooden paddle is getting a lot of use. Now some of the small high areas are difficult to see close up, so I'm moving the light board further back to see them better, and I'm using the plastic bullet tip on the blending hammer to knock these down again. The last bit of fine tuning to be done is on the top section, so I'm going in behind with my sharp root beer tip and I'm gradually bringing up all the fine micro lows in this top section. There are quite a few, so it takes a fair bit of patience to carry out. And similar to what I did on the lower section, I'm using the wooden tap down with a plastic bullet tip to remove all the sharp micro highs. Lastly, I'm using the blending hammer to remove the final high areas from the panel. The last thing to do is to remove the minor paint scratch which is sitting right on the bodyline. To do this, I use a fine piece of P2000 wet and dry paper followed up by a piece of P3000 Trizact. Then using my polisher, I apply a very small amount of 3M fast cut compound onto the mop head. I then work this into the panel to remove the scratch completely. After a quick wipe down with the microfiber cloth, the scratch has completely gone. Next, using a small amount of ultrafine polish, I polish the panel back up again. This helps to restore the panel's deep rich shine. So the last thing to do is to remove the cloth I was using earlier when pushing behind. Next, I can close the bonnet to check out the final result. Well, I think that was challenge completed and the results, I think, speak for themselves. And as you saw, I only use these tools for all the tap down work, and I can honestly say for someone like me who's quite set in their way of using their traditional tap down tools, it was difficult at first to try and get my head around something new, but quite quickly I got to grips with these and it felt like I've been using these tools for years. So I'll certainly be using these in future repairs. Now, if you are interested in getting your hands on any of these tools, then I'll leave a link to Steve's website and his Facebook page in the description below. And just to mention, they are available in a choice of either UK or USA tooltip thread sizes. So the last thing to say is thanks again for watching and coming along on this repair. If you like the video, then it'd be great to get a thumbs up. And if you aren't subscribed already, click that subscribe button and don't forget to click the notification bell to be kept in touch with all the latest videos. That's all for now. Thanks again for watching and I'll see you all on the next video.